inauguration of President Trump marks what many hope will be the start of better relations between the U.S. and Israel. For 8 years, President Obama often took a hard line against Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his policies. Now it looks like we're about to see a big change. When Donald Trump stunned the world on Election Day, some knew it also signaled a transformation in the U.S.-Israeli relationship.
Night and day. I think it will be dramatic, and it'll be immediate. There's no doubt in my mind.
Former Governor Mike Huckabee sees a big difference over the last 8 years.
I'm very optimistic about these next few years. I think it's going to mark a dramatically improved relationship between Israel and the United States.
The one thing that we can be very confident about with Donald J. Trump is he's a man of change.
Trump transition team member Becky Norton Dunlop believes Trump will take a new look at old Middle East problems.
I think that's one reason why people in Israel who have not liked the old way of doing things are hopeful and optimistic, because they at least see that in this new president, America is going to relook at some of these old problems.
Huckabee sees the failed two-state solution, the plan to give the Palestinians their own country side by side with Israel, as one old problem. Another one, the unwillingness to move the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem. He expects David Friedman, Trump's choice for ambassador to Israel, will be part of addressing those changes.
I think he believes we need to stop the BDS movement, which is very hurtful, not just to Israelis, it's hurtful to the Arab population of Israel as well. I think he will lead in helping get the embassy moved, and I hope he will help to forever put an end to what I consider an unworkable, irrational policy of the so-called two-state solution that frankly both Democrats and Republicans have put forward.
The signal is we're going to take a new look at things, and we're putting someone in there who's not the same old, same old.
With his decisions so far, it's fair to say that the Middle East hasn't seen anything quite like Donald Trump. In the waning days of his presidency, President Obama tried to change the dynamics of the Israeli-Palestinian peace process. First, he ordered the U.S. to abstain from UN Resolution 2334 that declared parts of Jerusalem and the biblical land of Judea and Samaria occupied Palestinian territory. After that, many expected the Paris Peace Summit to continue to paint Israel into a diplomatic corner. But the summit ended with more of a fizzle than a bang. More than 70 countries sent representatives to the Paris Peace Summit, including more than 30 foreign ministers. But the final resolution said nothing new.
Our first goal is to say, with strength, that a two-state solution is the only possible one. It is the only one that provides an answer to the legitimate aspirations and rights of both parties.
But Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the conference would only drive peace further away.
It creates a bigger gap regarding peace because it hardens the Palestinian stance and distances direct negotiations without preconditions.
Israel was concerned the summit would become a springboard for another anti-Israel resolution at the UN. The U.S. abstained, allowing anti-settlement resolution 2334 to pass just before Christmas. But Secretary of State John Kerry called Netanyahu to assure him that wouldn't be the case. CBN senior editor John Waggy said Kerry's statement is a reflection of a major transition.
I think this could be a real pivot point as far as world diplomacy goes, because the incoming Trump administration has signaled that they aren't prepared to do business as usual. And business as usual for the past 40 years essentially has been Israel needs to make painful sacrifices in order to bring peace with the Palestinians.
Now Israel is waiting to see how the Trump presidency will change the Middle East. Well, joining me to talk more about the incoming Trump administration and the impact on Israel is CBN News senior editor John Waggy and CBN News Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl. Julie, John, thanks for joining us here on Jerusalem Dateline. Tell us about, you talked about a historical pivot point in this story we just aired. Can you expound on that? What do you mean by that?
Well, I think, Chris, that there's a potential for a world-changing, historical page-turning, chapter-turning with the exit of the Obama administration and the incoming Trump administration, because the action that's already been taken in Washington, even before Trump was inaugurated, is Congress on Capitol Hill really changing the entire tone of the U.S. policy toward Israel especially, and defending in the United Nations Israel's actions there and Israel's right to be there. So we have legislation from senators like Lindsey Graham and Ted Cruz who are blocking funding for the United Nations if their bill passes unless the resolution 2334 is repealed. And then we have other legislation and also the testimony of Nikki Haley, who will be the ambassador to the UN, talking about Israel's treatment of the UN as a kick in the gut and saying she plans to change the Obama administration policies. So that's a big change in foreign policy for the entire world, not just the United States.
Right, and you had mentioned earlier that before we went on camera, maybe similar to what happened in 1981 when Reagan took over from Jimmy Carter.
There is that possibility. The tone is going to change dramatically. Now, one thing Reagan didn't have when he took over from Carter was all the protesters that planned to protest Trump's inauguration and the time right after that. With Reagan, there was still a civility in the country that we don't see right now. So there is that change.
Julie, you know, you've been down to Mahane Yehuda. We're going to share that later in the show. You've talked to Israelis, and we have reaction from even the mayor of Jerusalem. How would you define or characterize the reaction here in Israel to the new Trump administration?
Well, I think everybody's pretty happy about it. Even before the elections, even when Trump just had first won, people were saying like, well, you know, we thought we liked Hillary, but we think Trump will be better for Israel. So definitely people are looking forward to a friend in the White House, different than President Obama was. I know Prime Minister Netanyahu, this is the first time he will have worked with a Republican president.
That's right, yeah.
And yeah, the mayor of Jerusalem is kind of campaigning on behalf of Trump because he wants to move the embassy to Jerusalem.
That's right. Speaking of that, that's a huge issue right now here in Israel, and I know Trump seems to be the first president in a long time to actually make good on his promise to move the embassy. What impact do you think that's going to have here in Jerusalem, Israel, and the Middle East?
Yeah, the Middle East is threatening to burn if Trump moves the embassy. The Palestinians said it's going to be it'll be really bad. They'll launch another intifada. Whether that really happens or not, we don't know. I don't know if it could happen. That doesn't mean that it's wrong to do it, but it could happen. Or I don't know if Trump is perceived as really as strong as he seems to be, then I think we probably won't have a problem.
Yeah, exactly. John, one other thing that's going to change the dynamics of the quote-unquote peace process. We have a new ambassador designate, David Friedman, who really takes a whole different view of the peace process in the West Bank or biblical Judea and Samaria. What changes is that going to have on the peace process?
Well, we look at Resolution 2334, where it says that any Jewish settlement, basically in the West Bank, Judea and Samaria, is illegal. This is the world's position, and it was adopted by a number of nations. The United States, under Trump, and Ambassador Friedman comes in and basically says, this is disputed territory, not occupied. That's a sea change from what we've seen before. And if they follow through on it, it could take the world by the tail, really, and reverse what's been happening here for decades under the so-called Oslo peace process, which Israel trades land for only promises of peace and never gets the peace. So it's a real marker that could change world history, really.
And John, final question to you. I know we talked about this, a lot of euphoria going on right now, but there really is a spiritual battle. How would you address the spiritual battle that we're facing right now, and how can Christians be praying?
Well, I think, first of all, the fact that Christians are praying, believers are praying in the United States, in Washington, D.C., across the country. Believers are praying here in Jerusalem for what is about to unfold here. And I don't think that can stop. You can't just rest on your laurels, because this could be a very convulsive time ahead. And people need to be praying day by day, hour by hour, week by week. To see the plans and purposes for the Lord. That's what we're supposed to pray, for the peace of Jerusalem, and that His plans will be set and manifested here.
That's a great reminder to pray for the peace of Jerusalem like the Bible commands us, and I'm sure many people will be doing that. So Julie, John, thanks for joining us, and we'll be talking more as time goes on for this historic change here in Israel and the Middle East. Thanks.